Today we're going to show you how to do a shiplap wall. Before we moved into this house, we promised our daughter that she could do one of her walls in shiplap, and we've been here now almost 2 years and we still haven't done it. So we were planning on going on vacation and plans fell through. We had a few extra days where we could just be home, and so we thought we would take one of those days and do this wall in shiplap. And the only thing you really need to worry about is just taking everything off the wall. We'll take the faceplate off and then we'll cut the wood, and it's really as simple as that. And this is a really cheap way to do it. We're not going to use real shiplap because that can be a little spendy, and because we're painting it anyway, we weren't really concerned about the quality of wood. So we'll show you the wood that we're using and how we're cutting it, and then we'll show you how to put it up. This is the wood that we're using. We just bought this at Home Depot. It's a 3/8 of an inch underlayment that normally you would put before you lay down tile. You can get Home Depot or other stores will sometimes just cut it for you in whatever lengths that you want. I know that's not the way you can do it with all stores, and it's pretty easy to cut it yourself. So we went ahead and just bought the 4x8 sheets. They were about $10 a sheet, and they're really easy to cut. So we'll show you how we're going to cut it, and you can do the same thing at home. Or if you do have a place that will cut it for you, you just tell them what you want, and they'll cut the individual boards for you. There's a couple of different ways that you can cut this. If you have a table saw, you can set your guide to get the exact width of the boards that you want. We're going to do an 8-inch board, and I know a lot of people will use a 6, but we like the look of the 8-inch a little bit better. I do have a table saw, but I figured most people are going to have some sort of a circular saw, and it's really easy to do it this way. The first thing that I did is I just cut a piece of scrap board to act as a guide for my saw, so that my blade will come right at 8 inches, and from now on all I have to do is when I cut each board is just pull this board off and slide it over to the next one and just keep cutting boards until I've got as many boards as I need. But it makes it really easy, and if you look, I just clamped it all the way along the board just to keep it from moving. But it'll take me about 10 seconds to set up each additional cut. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut that first board right now. So there's our first board that we cut. You'll notice the cut's really pretty straight because we used that guide. So I'm going to go ahead and set up this guide again on the next board. All we're going to do is stick it, make sure it lines up flush with the board. And throw clamps along it all the way down so it doesn't move. We're just going to keep checking for flush on each side, and then once we have them all on, we'll check again and make any adjustments that we need. But this should keep all of your boards the same width. And I have heard one of the complaints when you do have like a Home Depot or a Lowe's make the cuts for you, that sometimes they're just going real quick and the cuts aren't always exactly the same. And they don't need to be exact, but they do need to be really pretty close. Otherwise you're going to run into problems when you're putting in your gaps. We just want to check to make sure that our saw blade is not going to hit anything, hit our sawhorses or whatever you're using to hold your wood up on. Then we can just start making the next cut. So we'll go through this board. It'll take us about 3 boards to do the wall that we're currently doing. So we're just going to go ahead and cut all of those right at once, and then we'll go from there. One of the things that we're going to want to do now that we've made all the cuts is we just need to mark all of our studs all the way across, because we want to be nailing right into the studs. You can nail into the drywall, but it's not quite as secure. And then we'll use a liquid nail to kind of help out with that. I've already marked some of them on the top, so I'm just going to mark these down below. And then we'll just run a chalk line all the way around and just make sure we have all the studs marked from top to bottom all the way along this wall. Okay, we've marked now the studs top and bottom, and so now you're going to need 2 people for this, but we're just going to chalk the line, so go ahead and snap it. And we'll do that all the way across the wall so we have all of our studs marked. Okay, we've got all of our boards, we've marked all of our studs, so we just put the first board up. You just want to periodically check for level, just to make sure that your cuts are still good and we're right on. We're going to use tile spacers just because I do a lot of tile, and so I've got these around, but you can use anything that you want to put spaces between the boards. Like, a lot of people will use even nickels just to keep the spacing even between all your boards. Now we've got everything marked up, we're just going to use our nail gun or brad nailer. We're going to put some nails in the corner and then just along each stud. I measured the rest of that wall for that first level, and we're at 47 1/8, so we'll go ahead and make that cut. It is easier to use a miter saw if you've got a miter saw. You can use the hand saw that we've used before, but it is much easier if you have access to one of these. It just makes it much nicer as you're making these quick cuts. One thing we should have shown you, we do put liquid nail down on the back, just so it holds to the wall a little bit better. The nails will hold it, but you want to have some kind of a liquid nail on the back just to make it a little more solid. And then the liquid nail. This is a larger tube. You don't need to get this large, but it makes it easier if you're doing a lot of board. Just kind of goop it on a little bit. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Okay. We finished that first level, and then this is just the leftover board from that cut that we used on the back side of the wall. So the nice thing is we've measured it, and it actually goes right up to our outlet, so it'll make our cuts a little bit easier. Otherwise you would just cut around the outlet, but we'll show you that on the next board. We're going to go ahead and just put the liquid nail on it. And then for now, we're just going to set it right on top of the board. Make sure the liquid nail grabs it. And then we're just going to slide it up and place our spacers right underneath. And it's really important. If you want a shiplap look, you really have to put the spacers in, otherwise it'll just look like you've got a wall with nothing. And it'll look like there's hardly any spacers there, and that there really isn't. But on a normal shiplap wall or the shiplap boards, they alternate. It's kind of a tongue and groove type thing where they slide into each other. But it just leaves that little gap, and that's the look that you want. If you want a little bit wider, you can do that, but you really don't need to. Again, I use spacers for tile just because I have them on hand, but you can use pretty much anything, nickels or pennies or something. Just all you want is just a little bit of a gap there. And then go ahead and just nail it in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just measure for our outlet here. And all we want to do is just measure where we are on the bottom, and that's about 1 inch. To the top is about 4.5. And we're right on the wall because we're going to be covering this up. And then side to side, we are about 2.5. We have to remember though, we've got 1/8 of an inch that we're going to move everything up. So as we make the cuts, we just have to remember that we are shifting everything 1/8 of an inch up. So this is going to make this 7/8 of an inch, and this is going to be 4 3/8. So we'll go outline that right on the board, and then we'll use a jigsaw just to cut that out, and then we'll measure that one to fit, or we'll dry fit it in, and then we'll throw the liquid nail on it and then nail it in. We went ahead and just drew out our outlet here right on the edge of the board. And if you need to, you can do this in the middle of a board also. You just want to drill a hole and then use a jigsaw to cut it out. But since ours just lined up for us on the edge, then it works out just to do it this way. going to go ahead and dry fit this, and it's a good thing that we dry fit it first. You'll notice we pulled the outlet all the way out, but if you can see, we just want to make sure that we have access to that hole right there and this hole up here, and you'll notice we didn't quite make that hole very well, so we need to take a little bit more off of this. And your cuts don't need to be really perfect here because all of this is going to be covered by your outlet cover. But you do want to go ahead and dry fit this, because otherwise you're trying to nick this so you can get your outlet back on when you're done. Now you'll notice the center of my stud is off here. So my stud's going right about to the edge of this board. So I'm going to take these nails in at an angle so that we get some of the stud when we do it. That'll keep it a little more solid. And we'll probably have to nail these in just because they're going at an angle and with a hammer, but that's okay. Now that we're done with the first 2 levels, we're just going to work our way up the wall doing the exact same thing. The only thing that you want to kind of take a look at is making sure that your seams don't line up with each other. So we're just going to randomly change our seams, or our seams. We do want to try to keep our seam right on one of the studs if possible, but that's not absolutely necessary. It just makes them tie in a little bit better when you're nailing them in, because they end up being level with each other. But we're going to work our way up the wall, just alternating our seams, and we'll show you again when we get to the top. Okay, we've got all the way up to the top row. So the only thing we want to do now is make sure that as we measure all the way across to make sure that, you know, any inconsistencies either within the boards or in the walls, nothing's ever perfectly square. But as we measure, like here we're about 7 3/8. But we want to make up, remember we need about 1/8 of a line here. So we're going to cut these at 7 1/4. And I've already measured across and we're pretty even across, but if you need to make up any difference, just do that as you're ripping the boards that you cut earlier. These are 8-inch boards here, so we're not taking very much off, but we need to cut all the way across about 7 1/4.